Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, First Responders, the Next Chapter, Healing from the Past, Career Transition and Helping You Navigate the Legal Process. My name is Tracy Duncan and on behalf of the team at Fearless, thank you so much for joining us today. While everyone is logging in and getting settled, and before I hand over to our host, Belinda Neal, just some general housekeeping and announcements. As always in our webinars, we welcome any questions you may have during the presentations. Please comment in the Q&A section and we hope to have some time at the end of the session to answer these. Please also note we will be recording this webinar. All registered attendees will receive the YouTube link in the coming days, probably by the end of the week. So if you're unable to attend this event live or need to duck off early for one reason, you are still able to view the recording at your own convenience. Fearless is a charity run by volunteers, so we're always grateful to receive donations, no matter how small, to continue the work we do. Our vision is to restore control to people living with post-traumatic stress. Donations can be made via our website, www.fearless.org.au. You can stay connected with Fearless socially on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. We provide updates on any upcoming webinars and events on these pages, so be sure to follow us. I think we're ready to get started now. So good afternoon, Belinda. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks so much, Tracy. My name is Belinda Neal. I'm a former New South Wales police officer who was medically retired with post-traumatic stress disorder. After many years of recovery, I'm now a board member of Fearless PTSD Australia New Zealand and an ambassador for Australian Kookaburra Kids Foundation. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the Dharawal people that are the traditional custodians of the land upon which I'm hosting this webinar. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders, both past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are listening to this webinar. Welcome to today's webinar. Please note, we at Fearless are not mental health experts or medical experts. We are here to invite discussion and provide information about post-traumatic stress disorder. If something triggers you, please consult your GP, medical practitioner, or mental health professional. Now, I am passionate about educating and empowering those with PTSD and their loved ones. Due to my background as a first responder, I'm particularly keen to assist those who have dedicated their own lives to helping others. I am very excited for today's webinar, First Responders, the Next Chapter, Healing from the Past, Career Transition, and Helping You Navigate the Legal System. We have 5 very passionate people from organisations who want to make the lives of first responders and their families easier. Alana and Pia from Emergency will talk about healing from the past, followed by Simon Bradstock from Beyond the Badge, who will talk about career transitioning. And then Brendan Bourke and Melissa Arndell from Bourke Legal will help you navigate the legal system. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Alana Singleton and Pia Schindler, founders of the not-for-profit charity Emergency. Alana and Pia both spent close to 18 years as New South Wales police officers. In fact, they both had successful careers in criminal investigation for over a decade and were promoted to the position of sergeant. Between 2016 and 2018, they were both diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and a range of other mental health conditions as a result of their work as police officers. Now, individually, they faced their diagnoses and had to navigate the complexities that surround a workplace injury. But they were also coping with the loss of identity and purpose that came with being medically retired in their 30s. They were lucky to have each other and saw the benefit of that support for each other. They could talk openly and without judgment. They could share fears, experiences, and the lessons they had learned with each other. Now, whilst in inpatient care in 2019, they both realised there was so much confusion and fear, yet so little support and guidance for others just like themselves. And if they were going through this, how many other people were feeling the same, battling the same? And this is when they created Emergency, an Australian registered charity that supports the mental health of New South Wales and ACT emergency service workers, both serving and retired. I'm now going to hand over to Alana and Pia to talk about their journey, their charity Emergency, and how this can benefit you. Thank you so much, Alana and Pia.
Thanks so much, Belinda, and thank you to your team at Fearless for inviting us onto this webinar. And thanks for everyone who's out there that's joined us, because I think it's really important to start to open up the conversation about mental health, especially in emergency services, and what that looks like for a person. I was very lucky to meet Alana back in 1999. We started uni together. Funny enough, we did a Bachelor of Policing together, went through the academy together, and then we started work together. We remained friends, but we never worked in the same office or space. Alana, fast forward 15 years, 18 years, Alana fell ill with a PTSD injury, and she would try to talk to me as a friend. And although I think I was there as a supportive friend, I really didn't have the actual understanding of what she was going through. It wasn't until 2 years later when I suffered an injury myself, and I called Alana and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that now I understand what you went through for that 2 years alone." So I only through my own diagnosis and my own injury was I able to really understand how that affected Alana prior to me even acknowledging it. So with Alana's support, we both navigated the minefields of educating ourselves around what PTSD was, because although we'd served in emergency services, we actually didn't really know what PTSD was. It was never really explained to us until we were actually diagnosed. And then we went through therapy together. We figured out what was good for our progression and what wasn't good for our progression. And then we ended up, funny enough, in inpatient care in 2 different facilities at the same time. And looking back, I would say Alana would agree with me that that was probably one of the lowest points of both of our lives, where we were doing a 28-day inpatient stay, and just that realization of, wow, like I'm actually in a hospital receiving treatment for a mental illness. And it was through that treatment that Alana and I both remained in touch throughout that treatment. And we both, because we're in different facilities, were amazed that there were other people exactly like us that were receiving treatment, other emergency service members. And we just said, wow, we could not believe the amount of people that were affected just within those 2 different facilities. And we thought, if we are feeling this way and we've been affected this way, surely there are other people that need our help. So with time, because recovering, we don't like to use the word recovering from a mental health injury. Living with a mental health injury takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of self-work, and a lot of time. So with time, we eventually created and registered the charity Emergency with the vision to provide one-on-one support and guidance to those emergency service workers that find themselves in the same position that we did. Alana and I are firm believers that if we were aware of the teachings that we were only taught after we were diagnosed, while we were still serving, that we would still be in the career that we wanted to be in for the rest of our lives. We joined the New South Wales Police thinking I was going to be the next commissioner. I had great aspirations. So to have that cut short is very upsetting. You lose your purpose. So we now go into training days and teach what we had learnt through our therapy and hope that other people might benefit from that. We provide services in 4 key areas. So medical, legal, financial, and wellbeing. Members contact us on a daily basis and ask for advice, and we basically act as a referral agency to other support organisations around Australia that can provide help in support and recovery, and primarily in the education space. We really believe that the more education that you do have around this area, particularly within the wellbeing and the medical space, as well as the legal space, that you're very much more in control of your recovery. So it might make the journey a little bit more easier. And there's lots of avenues that people are just not aware of when they're diagnosed. So to give you an example, when you're diagnosed, you have a very limited mental capacity. People are just, giving you information and telling you to read this, read that, speak to this person, but you're really retaining very minimal information. So we actually break that information down so that the person can understand it. We also present webinars similar to this, where we go into depth into one particular topic that might be affecting our members at the time, just so that people have more of an understanding about the procedures that may follow after a diagnosis. We also run wellbeing activities throughout New South Wales and ACT. We found that within our organisation, when you leave or you're medically retired or you go off sick, you really lose your sense of tribe and you lose your sense of purpose, which is really spirals you into a form of depression. And there's a lot of shame and judgment, I think, that a person feels once they receive that diagnosis. So to be able to connect our members that are retired with other like-minded members within their community is really, really valuable. We're told by our members that they really look forward to those connection activities, whether it's a physical event that they go to or whether we fund, a lunch or a coffee. They really enjoy that social outlet that they probably would not have experienced being on their own within this recovery journey. That's basically why we created the charity, is just to support members of our own, one-on-one support and guidance.
Thank you so much for that, Pia. That's wonderful. Did Alana, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things, I suppose, in this topic about healing from the past is, Pia and I have probably found that in places like finding purpose again. I think that it's really important for that healing. Pia talked about how we support through education in the areas of legal, medical, wellbeing and financial. But I think when you have a service related past and occupation, it's more than that for most of us. It's an identity. And when that's taken away from you, we would really encourage people to use the opportunity to find where their purpose lies within their future and work towards that in a positive and future focused way. The system that we're in often keeps bringing us back into our past. And, one of our biggest key areas is the fact that we want to encourage people to accept who they are now with kindness to themselves, because we're also very highly critical of ourselves, but be able to look at the opportunity to move forward in a positive way and find what their purpose might look like and who they get to be and want to shape themselves out into their future. So
thanks so much, Alana and Pia. If we've got some first responders out there watching this webinar today, and they're in the position where they may have just been diagnosed with PTSD or some other mental health issue, what is the best advice that you would have for them?
Sorry, Belinda. I thought Pia had that. Can you just repeat that question again? I was actually reading the chat to see whether there were any questions coming through there. My apologies.
No, that's okay. A question for you is for first responders who might be watching you guys talk today about emergency. What's your best advice for someone who might have just been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder or other mental health issue?
I think is to give yourself a moment. I think because we're also used to service and we hold so much value in that, I think a lot of us find it very hard to sit still and to just be in the position that we are. And for emergency services, this diagnosis can often as well come with a lot of anger and embitterment because of the loss of control. And so, like Pia said, educating yourself first and foremost about what's actually happening. The second thing I would say is be kind to yourself. You know, we treat others with such respect, but internally I find we're such a group of people who are so internally critical. And finding the acceptance of where you are right now and being okay with that. Our capacity is very different to what it was 5 or 10 years ago, yet I found a way, and Pia and I have both found a way to live and do amazing things again. And, you know, with time, these things do heal, they do get easier. Yeah, I don't know whether Pia would add anything to that.
Yeah, I might just add something there, Belinda, because I really appreciate this forum to be able to open up and start to talk about these things, because I think that that's very important, especially within emergency services, is that we don't talk about it. These people are serving in a very highly traumatic career day in and day out, yet the actual crux of the issue isn't being spoken about openly. And I think the more forums we have like this to be able to make it be okay just to talk about it, just to even talk about it. We don't have to make any admissions or anything, but be open to discussing it, you know, in the car when they're driving around or even at home with their families. Just be that little bit more open, I think is going to be really beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. And I can wholeheartedly agree with what both Alana and we're talking about. Is it's about learning to become comfortable with your current capacity as well. And that might take some time, but I can see what you are both doing. I know where I've been and what I've been able to achieve so far. And there is a life outside of PTSD. So I think that's wonderful. I love what you guys have done. Can I ask, for our first responders who are listening in or their families here today, how can they contact Emergency? Which are the best ways to get in touch with you?
Sure. So we have a website, emergency.org.au, and our email is info@emergency.org.au. We're online socials, Emergency New South Wales ACT. So anyway, you can just look us up and send us an email. It's just Alana and I that run the charity, so you would get either one of us. And we really are passionate about helping other people. So please reach out if you need to.
And with some of the programs that you offer, are they also available for the families of first responders?
Yeah, this has been a really big topic lately, the need for family support. We currently have, information that we can share with families about how to best live with a person that's been diagnosed with PTSD. We do have lots of resources, so please reach out if you need to. We do have an online support group as well for family and friends. And we also have a Emerge Kids, which we really value the connection with the children and the family, because we believe that that's important to moving forward and recovery as well.
Absolutely. And we've had some questions in relation to, although Emergency operate within New South Wales and ACT, do you have affiliations with any other organisations nationwide that if people want to, firstly, do you have any affiliations, and how could, say, someone from Queensland contact them?
Absolutely. We work with our neighbouring states a lot, including WA as well. So we call them our sister charities around Australia that we often work with, very like-minded organisations. So if you are in a state that is not New South Wales or ACT, please reach out and we can direct you to the best one in your area.
Oh, thank you so much. There is one question that has also come up is, someone has asked, you've mentioned time. Do you believe that there are no timeframes to repair?
I once asked my doctor this because I was really frustrated one day when I saw my psychiatrist and said, when am I going to feel like myself? When am I going to be normal? And the doctor's response was, well, how long did it take for you to get this way? And then I started thinking, well, probably a good 18 years. But in saying that, I don't believe that I will probably ever be the person that I was before. I don't know if I actually really want to be, because I find more purpose in my life now. And I encourage those others to look at that as well, that when that door closes, another door will open, and something maybe more within your capacity that might hold more purpose than what the original career did.
Oh, look, I absolutely agree with that. That's absolutely spot on. I recall nearly every time I went to see my psychiatrist, I would ask, how long is it going to take? Because I'm impatient.
Yeah.
He would just say each time, how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
The reality is that there is a journey. We do learn a number of things to help ourselves along the way. And there are so many things that we can achieve, and all first responders watching can achieve. Just you and Alana with Emergency offer a lot of wonderful tools which can help empower both first responders and their families. I absolutely love that. So I just want to thank you both for coming. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think that was it, unless there was any questions that we had to answer.
Just one last question for Pia and Alana. How do you find your purpose?
Oh, wow, that's deep, isn't it?
I think, yeah, that self-reflection and having that self-awareness that I think for a long time in a service organisation, you maybe don't give yourself an allowance to do. I think using your treatment and your recovery time to really start to sit with yourself and figure out what is it that, you know, brings you joy? What is it that sits with your ethics and your morals? You know, what is it that's important to you and what's important to the people around you? I think in using that time to just really self-discover who you really are inwardly, then generates an idea of what purpose might look like for you, because I'm sure it looks different to each one of us.
Absolutely, that's beautifully answered. Thank you so much, Alana and Pia. And we'll be sending out your details of how to contact you later on for all those who have registered. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.
I'd like to now introduce Simon Bradstock from Beyond the Badge. Now, I get numerous messages from first responders who are medically retiring or looking at a career transition, but feel they do not have the skills or abilities for any other job other than their career as a first responder. I have to say, not only do you have the skills, but you would be an asset to any employer. You have wonderful critical thinking skills, leadership skills from having to manage the many scenes you've attended, communication skills, the ability to talk to people in highly stressful situations. You have the ability to adapt to any situation, as you never knew what sort of job you might be called to next. And this is just a few examples. All of these skills and more are transferable. But as first responders, we are not always good at selling ourselves. And this is why I have asked our next presenter to come here today. Now, Simon is a former New South Wales police officer who transitioned to the private sector in 2004. As a point of interest, I can attest to his high level of skill and professionalism, having been a student on one of his tactical courses while I was a police negotiator, and having worked with him at a number of high-risk incidents. Now, a combination of practical skills and lived experiences developed throughout a 17-year policing career provided an important foundational skills that supported Simon's career transition. Now, following a period of coaching and peer support, Simon successfully commenced entry and mid-level management roles in the areas of governance and compliance. This quickly led to more senior roles to the level of general manager. Following this, Simon developed his own consultancy and advisory practice, which he has led for 16 years. A reflection on the challenges faced post-career transition influenced Simon to develop a formalised coaching program to support first responders who were considering or who had left their first responder career and are in the process of identifying a new career opportunity. Beyond the Badge reflects that vision. Thank you so much, Simon. Over to you.
Thanks, Belinda. And I firstly wanted to thank Pia and Alana for your talk. We've met a couple of times, and what a wonderful service. And we keep saying that I wish we had that when we were going through our challenging times when we left. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. We have, when I say we, my work partner, Sean Harron, who's also a very experienced former police officer out of WA, works with me on the Beyond the Badge program. Sean and I have two really important messages to start today. And the first one is, thank you for your service. We, as first responders, Sean and I know the tremendous highs that we got from some of the work that we did, and they're life lasting. But we also recognise some of the really challenging experiences that can deeply impact us for a long time. The second message we have is that your skills are highly sought after in the private sector, not-for-profit sector. And we can say that with authority because Sean and I have been out of policing now in a combined period for probably around 30 years. At the moment, I'm in a role where I recruit people on behalf of companies, and it's a challenging job to find people. It's a hard job to find good people, and it's impossible to find great people. And you fit in very much to that great people category. Beyond the Badge, where did it start? It started from tragedy. A friend to Belinda and I, by the name of Colin Young. Colin was an operator in my team with the Tactical Operations Unit. Colin got out of policing, tried to kind of assimilate into a private sector, was a military man also, came back to policing, didn't like some of the changes, then got out again, and it was all too much for him, and he took his own life. And as police, as we do, after such a tragic event, we have a funeral, we have a wake, and typically, we make all these promises about what we're going to do. And I remember the promise that I made. One of them was to make a Facebook page that all members of the Tactical Operations Unit keep in touch with each other. And I rang my son actually that night of the wake, and he did it for us. And the second one was, being a redhead with a short temper, I thought, well, the service that former members and current members who want to get out are getting actually doesn't fit what's required. And let me take you through that. The process that we undertook to kind of create Beyond the Badge was all about identifying what is it that the first responders need to support them in their next step. And to do that, we made an appointment with Police Legacy in New South Wales, and what we wanted to find out was what is the support that's provided, and there was plenty of it. The main support was there was what's called a career transition fund at the time, where, from memory, it was $2,500 that members could access. They could then go and do some type of course, or they could get an RPL for a whole bunch of qualifications. And Sean and I challenged that as an appropriate way to support police. And the reason being is because if I use crude terms like, you are the greatest product to an employer, but you find it difficult to sell yourself. And the concept that we introduced to Police Legacy is that we need to take the first responders and we need to work with them and to help them build a resume that the community can read and understand. And with the greatest respect, knowing all the wonderful things and the challenging things that we've done in our time, it's hard for the community to read that and say, well, how does that fit with this job that the person's going for? So our pitch to Legacy is that we need to run a face-to-face program, and we need to get them with us, and we need to take them through how to build a resume. how to use all the experiences that the police, fireys, ambos have gained and convert that into keywords and key competencies. The second thing we need to do is we need to help you to network. We need to introduce you to organisations such as chambers of commerce. We need to introduce you to some of our private connections. And thirdly, we need to work with you about the differences between policing type interview for a job and what really happens from a practical perspective, because it's grossly different. And whilst nowadays a lot of interviews are conducted over Microsoft Teams or Zoom, but there's also other ways that interviews are conducted, such as a coffee chat. And what Sean and I set out to do was to simulate this and give you an experience on how to do that. And we do that in the program. One of the reasons for that is because what we're not that great at doing, as I said, is selling ourselves. And essentially the Beyond the Badge program, which is a 2-day live program, it's open to everyone. There is no cost. So we run it face-to-face, or for our friends who are outside of the New South Wales area, we run online programs. So we have reach across Australia. We're doing some work now with New Zealand Police. We've had a member of the Scottish Special Forces on one of our programs, who incidentally then emigrated to Australia and actually now works as a senior security consultant to one of our corporate partners, which was a great message. So we have reach everywhere. I want to come back to this selling ourselves piece and the issues of identity that Pia and Alana had spoke about. We recognise that this loss of identity is a really challenging one. But from our experience working with the private sector, and I work with probably 4 different companies now, they want to know your background. And it's such a unique value proposition to employers. And the reason is because when something goes amiss within a business that's outside, their normal way they do things, they look for you. And we want them to know what our background is. Now, we don't have to walk around and tell them, all our war stories, but the thing that you have that's most impressive to employers is your presence. And it's easily identifiable within businesses. The way you walk, the way you talk, you have this unbelievable level of resilience that's just not there in the private sector. You're used to change, and change is happening all around business. You're used to dealing with conflict. You're used to managing multiple tasks. You're used to prioritizing, and you really don't get worried about who you speak with. For example, you can speak with the cleaner and you can speak with the CEO and give advice, because that's what you're used to doing. Those skill sets just are not available off the shelf in the private sector. And what Sean and I do in the program is we work really hard to help you sell yourself. And how do we do that? Again, we help you build a resume. We help you sell yourself at interview. Let me give you an example. Now, I would suggest everyone online now has been for some type of interview, whether it's in their respective agency or maybe outside. But some of the things in the interview that we promote is, at the end of the interview, when you get asked that question, do you have any questions? And 99% of the times people say, oh, no, it's all very good, thank you. We see that as such a tremendous opportunity to promote your value. And one of the things that we say that we would do then is we'd ask the interviewer, look, can you tell me what success looks like in the next 12 months? So where I'm kind of going here is we script the whole interview process from when you walk into the room or when you jump onto Teams to when they ask you a question that you're not actually sure how to answer it, to right to the end when they ask you, have you got any questions? And just before you're about to leave, we've also got a one-liner. So we want to take you through this process where we can help you familiarize and prepare yourself for that interview. I wanted to talk about a program that we facilitated probably about 5 weeks ago now, and we have some corporate partners who fund our existence. And typically in New South Wales, it's through Clubs New South Wales. And about 4 years ago, we had a lady by the name of Michelle Glasgow. Now, Michelle was a licensing sergeant within the Campbelltown, southwestern area of Sydney. She came on our program actually looking for a cleaner's job. And, you know, before anyone comes on the program, Sean and I make sure we have a one-on-one with them just to get you familiar and to work with you so that you're accepting that you're in a safe place, and you are. With Sean and me, you're in a safe place. You know, we're trusted people. We don't have an allegiance to any of your agencies. We don't work for insurers. We work for ourselves. So everything that you do, everything you say on our program is confidential. So Michelle comes on the program and she's looking for a cleaner's job, and you know, internally I'm going to get really frustrated and also salivating when I'm reading a CV thinking cleaner's job. We'll see about that. Well, 4 weeks ago, Michelle came back on the program. This time she was a guest presenter, but she was also the general manager of an organisation, the Women's Domestic Violence Advocacy Service. And she's talking about her journey from leaving police, no identity, no one will hire me, to using absolutely the skills that she'd learned during her service. And now she's general manager. And I actually had a bit of a dig at her because she had to leave the session a bit early because she was going to do a budgeting session. And she would never have, you know, kind of gone down that path, but for her acceptance that her skills were transferable. And that's a beautiful story for us. And we've got many other stories. It doesn't matter whether you're currently going through a medical process, whether you've got a claim through the respective insurer. To us, it doesn't matter. Sean and I don't set out to be recruiters. We don't put pressure on anyone to get a job. All we simply do is to say, look, when you're ready, come and see us, sit on the program, and it will help you map out your next steps. Right? That's our really important message today. Right? It's a no pressure support, hand-holding exercise. And when the program's finished, we're still there. And to that extent, we had a catch up last week with someone who'd been on our program 5 years ago, and they weren't ready for their next steps, but they are now. So we want to make sure that that message is imparted to you, that, you know, there is no pressure. It's simply coming on the program so that you can connect to some trusted people who've gone through exactly the same journey as you had. You know, I got out against my will with PTSD. I was at what I thought was at the top of my game. I was also going to be a career policeman, and I lost all identity, but there is a next step. So we understand, you know, let's take this slow. Let's have some trusted people. And we respect that there may be some other things going on in your life at the moment in terms of the medical, in terms of the legal, but we will work with you in that respect. When we talk about this concept of a value proposition, in the program, we run an exercise right up front, and it's a really simple one. And the first question we ask is, who's ever been to a major motor vehicle accident? And people look at us as if we're fools. And it's a pretty easy answer. And we just go through an exercise. Tell us all the things you did at the accident. And we whiteboard it. It's fairly casual. And then we convert that and we put on the screen a couple of jobs. And we say, what you've done there is exactly the same as senior people in business. But we've got to be able to sell that at an interview. The other important part about selling ourselves is when we create resumes, there's some software the companies use. It's called ATS, Applicant Tracking System Software. And it's important that we understand about that, because what it does is it looks for keywords in the resume mapped against the job description. And in my early times when I left the police, you know, I put down all the things that I did, but I didn't use the keywords that are in the job ad. And what the software does is it looks for these keywords, and if it's not there, it's in the bin. So we talk about how to kind of map it so you're using the keywords in the job ad, but aligned against your skill set. The kind of last thing before, we're delighted to take some questions, is that when you come on the program, what we're not expecting to hear is anything about your personal background. That's, to be blunt, it's none of our business. We respect that you've gone through some very traumatic times, and you're potentially going through some really difficult times also. So we're not about that. We don't want to delve in. There's none of this, tell me about your background in policing. We go straight into it. We want to talk about the future. We want to talk about the opportunities. And at times during the program, that light will flick. And for the last 6 years, what we find is on day 2 of the program, the people come in and it's like they are absolutely different. We know that part 1 of the program, it's still that kind of working out piece. You're trying to work us out. We're trying to work you out. But by day 2, the candidates are absolutely different people. So for us, it's really important about continuing that relationship, that we are trusted partners for you, that we're there after the program, and we'd love to get you on the program, whether it be the face-to-face or whether it be the online. And the way to do that is simply to go to our website, beyondthebadge.com.au. And on that website, we have our upcoming programs. To generate an interest in that, all you need to do is there's a message link there. Send us a message, we'll ring you back, and that starts the process. It's as easy as that. Belinda, it'd be great if we had time just to respond to any questions that the team may have.
Absolutely, Simon. There is a question here. You speak of selling yourself. How does someone clearly understand the value proposition when they may be struggling with the notion of self-value?
Yeah, it's probably a second exercise that we do on the program is we ask people to tell us a story about something that they did at work. And first responders are the greatest storytellers of all time. And that story usually starts out with, well, there was a time when and it might have been you planned for a search warrant. It could have been that you manage a response to high areas of criminal activity. It might have been where you led a team to a successful outcome. So this kind of value proposition, and why we tell you to start thinking about some of your stories, is because to use your story to indicate to the hiring manager your levels of competence. So we pick out keywords. So for example, if it's, I wrote a book about dealing with victims of crime. That's what one of our participants told us was one of his value propositions. And we kind of unpacked that and said, oh, really? Well, tell us all the things you did to build that. Well, we researched, we worked with stakeholders, we developed the budget, we did some market research. And in the interview, we use all these competencies to demonstrate that you're competent. And it's really important that in the resume, we're not using kind of motherhood statements like, oh, I'm a good project planner. Well, everyone is. We want to use something that you've been involved in, and we can break that down and you can tell the interviewer. And this is typically important because most of the questions that we get asked these days are called behavioral questions. And simply what the hiring manager is trying to do is to understand, what have you done in the past that can bring value to my business? And that's how we work that through the program, is by using some of your stories to highlight the key competencies to create value for the organisation or the hiring people.
Thanks so much for that, Simon. And also, I'll ask you the same question as I did with Alana and Pia. Is your organisation, is Beyond the Badge available throughout Australia, or do you have affiliate organisations and people can contact you?
Sure. We're really proud to say that Beyond the Badge is Sean and me. We talk about trust, and as former first responders, there's not many people we trust. And we're not in the business of kind of getting other people to run the program for us. It's us. But we have national reach. So if we've got some people in WA who are coming onto our next online program. We've got 15 people from Queensland Police coming on our online program in January. And the way they did that was jump on the website, send us a message, we'll ring you back, and we're underway. So absolutely national reach.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Simon. I know you're extremely passionate about this area, and it really shows. I've sat in on the program and I cannot speak highly enough of it. So thank you so much for what you're
Our pleasure.
do. There might be some more questions which Simon can answer off screen. Because of our timings, I'm going to move on to our third organisation, and I would like to introduce Bourke and Melissa Arndell from Bourke Legal. Now to navigating the legal system. I have noticed many messages on various first responder social media sites outlining concern and confusion over the New South Wales Workers Compensation Scheme. So our next two presenters aim to make this easier for you. Bourke is the Director of Bourke Legal. Brendan is a Queenslander born and bred and was admitted to the Supreme Court of Queensland in July 1990. After admission, Brendan honed his skills in both plaintiff and defendant insurance work, initially in Queensland, before moving to the Northern Rivers of New South Wales in 1993. He has been a law firm owner since 2005 and now runs Bourke Legal with fellow director Pania Watt. Brendan has a strong desire to assist first responders and finds it rewarding being part of the journeys of those he has assisted over the past 2 decades. Quote, "I really enjoy pulling apart a complex case, maybe one that to others seems hopeless, and finding a solution," Brendan says. "It's not rocket surgery, it's attention to detail that gets results." I'd also like to introduce you to Melissa Arndell. Melissa's an associate at Bourke Legal. Melissa graduated from Macquarie University with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology in 2009. Then in 2013, Mel decided to become a solicitor and undertook her study whilst working as a paralegal at a boutique personal injury law firm based in Orange. She was admitted as a solicitor at the Supreme Court of New South Wales in May 2020. Following her admission, Mel realised that plaintiff personal injury law was her passion and represented many people injured at work, in motor vehicle accidents or on public premises. She particularly relishes assisting police officers with their claims. Quote from Mel, "I enjoy listening to a client's story and hearing about who they were before their injury and who they are now. With a full picture in my mind, I can then assist them to navigate this difficult chapter in their lives with calmness and compassion. I always want my clients to feel that someone is on their side." Brendan and Melissa aim to make the often confusing New South Wales Workers Compensation Scheme that little bit easier to understand. With expertise in assisting first responders navigate the legal process, their presentation will focus on the potential elements for those hurt on duty. Brendan and Mel have specific expertise supporting New South Wales police officers and will provide insight into your rights for weekly benefits and lump sum compensation, as well as demystifying TPD and negligence claims. Thank you so much, Brendan and Mel. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Belinda. And as a proud Queenslander, I should say I'm always happy to help New South Welshmen. And I will say that I'm going to speak very slowly for you all today. The other thing I'll ask you to do for the moment is just suspend the screen for just 1 second, because I've got to get my screen up here. Okay, thank you. So look, today Mel and I are going to talk to you about the safety net that's underneath first responders. We're going to have a particular focus on New South Wales Police. Police that get to the point where you're cooked, your bucket's full, you just can't get dressed and face another day on the truck. So some of this information applies to other first responders, particularly in fire services and ambulance, but most of it relates to police officers who are just about to call it a day. So the reason we're enthusiastic about today is that we've become frustrated that we can help police get through the legal system, but we don't know how to help them once our bit's finished. So it's really exciting to become aware of the fantastic things that organisations like Fearless, Beyond the Badge and Emergency can offer you. including doing a range of things that will help you find your next career after your time as a first responder. We're going to talk to you in brief today about your first 9 months off work, weekly payments, how they work, medical discharge, what that means, TPD claims, Section 66 lump sum claims, getting 2 sets of weekly payments, and finally, whether you should sue your employer. Is it right for you? But firstly, I'd like to share with you something that I've picked up from 35 years as a solicitor. The last 20 of them dealing mostly with first responders, most of them police officers. So it's not legal advice and it's not medical advice, but it comes direct from former police, and it's this. Give yourself 2 years from your last day at work before you even think about going back to work. You heard Pia talk earlier about the cotton wool head, about being a bit fuzzy, about just wondering whether you're ever going to get back to how you were before. Look, most of the police officers that I see, you've been functioning at such a high level, you can't understand how it is that you can't remember more than 2 things. You go shopping and you forget why you're there. You get really confused. It's part of your body's reaction to having had your adrenaline meter cranked up to 110% for the last 20 years. Once you turn it off, it just goes haywire and you'll find yourself really confused for quite a while. You have to have that sign next to your bed, socks first, then shoes. Don't worry, everyone's going through it. Everyone's the same for a year or 2 after they leave. Even angry redheads like Simon, and look where he is now. Look, because you've got such an enormous work ethic and such a high pain threshold, most first responders completely lose sight of the fact that very, very few people can do what they do. You lose an arm and you keep working. I get a paper cut and I call an ambulance and a psychiatrist. You're different to the rest of us. There's roughly 12 million of us in the state and there's only 24,000 police officers. You're attending motor accidents, dealing with domestic violence, trying to put shattered lives back together, consoling grieving relatives, trying to stop young kids' lives go off the rails. You're being at your best when people are at their worst. You don't wash that out of your system in 6 weeks or 6 months. So look, going back to work too early is a bit like having a knee injury. Playing footy, you have surgery, the doctor says don't go back for 12 months. But you're better, you're stronger, you're smarter, you're faster, so you go back on the field before you're ready and you blow it. And then you go back again and you blow it again. Don't do it. You'll do so much better if you give yourself time to heal. Take the time to utilise services like emergency. Get treatment, get support from your medical practitioners. Try everything, even tofu. Join your local coffee group of former first responders. You'll be surprised to see who's there and how much practical advice they've got to offer. If you go back to work because your kids need to see you do it, or because your brother's on your case, or your mum's nagging you to get off the couch and do something, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Don't ever make a life decision to please people who don't know where you've been and don't know what you've seen. You'll instinctively know when the time's right to go back to work. The passion to help people and your commitment to the community, which led you into policing in the first place, is just the thing that's going to look after you for the next part of your career. But you've got to give it time and you've got to allow the process to happen. Get assistance from beyond the badge to help you through the process of return to work when you're ready. You can't compress water, you can't compress time, and you can't compress healing. You've given your body, your mind, and your emotions to the people of New South Wales for the last 20 years. So now it's time for us to pay you back by giving you a bit of time off the road. Time to recover, and we'll use all the tools at our disposal. I'm talking about the whole system here, not me, to help you transition into your next career. We're about to show you how the workers' compensation system actually encourages you to get back to work, which is just what we want, and how it can be personally, socially, and financially rewarding for you if you do. So look, I just wanted to start with that. Now I'll turn it over to Mel, who's going to give you an idea of the safety net that sits underneath you until you turn 68 and beyond.
Thanks, Brendan, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. If your PTSD gets to the point that you can't continue working, there is a pretty decent financial safety net available. I'm going to run through that safety net for police officers for you now. One of the best parts of my job is sitting down with a police officer who has just gone off work and seeing their visible relief after we explain this safety net to them. You will get 9 months off work at your full award rate whilst you're deciding whether you want to or can go back to work. No overtime, no user pays, no specialist unit allowances, but you will be paid your full loaded salary. Then you'll transition onto 7 years at 75% of your closing award rate. Look, it's not as good as what you were earning, but it's not too bad either. And it definitely gives you a chance to start focusing on your next chapter without worrying too much about how to continue to pay your bills. These 75% payments will be a combination of payments from EML, your workers' compensation insurer, and a top up from TAL, your income protection insurer. Without going into precise details of how the payments are calculated, the EML payment is based on how many dependents you have. If you're single, you'll get around $550 per week, but you'll get a higher EML payment for a dependent spouse and for each dependent child. The good news is that for your 7 years of income protection payments, it doesn't actually matter if you're single or if you've got a spouse and 4 kids. TAL will top you up to 75% in both cases, so you'll be receiving the same amount as another police officer who was the same rank as you before they went off work. At the end of 7 years, your TAL payments will stop, but you will continue to be eligible for EML workers' compensation payments until the age of 68 and medical expenses for the rest of your life. Brendan will cover these payments to the age of 68 in a bit more detail later. But first, let's go back to that initial year after you stop working. About 9 months after your last day of work, not only will you transition from 100% of your salary down to 75% with income protection, but you'll also get medically discharged. New South Wales Police will liaise with you and your doctors, and if you can't go back to work, they'll discharge you. Medical discharge can be distressing for some people. It can actually be relieving for others. But the good news is that it doesn't have any effect at all on any of the benefits that are available to you, except in a positive way. At the time that you're becoming medically discharged, you can put in your total and permanent disablement or TPD application. Your TPD benefit could be worth anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 or more. We've had clients that have been able to pay off their mortgage in one hit, thanks to this TPD benefit. Now that we're talking TPD, some of you may be aware of the drastic changes to the TPD system for police officers that have been announced only this month. We're not going to cover that in detail today, but essentially, it seems that if you've gone off work and been certified to have PTSD by a psychiatrist before 7 December 2022, your TPD benefit will remain the same. However, if you go off work after 7 December 2022, or you don't get certified to have PTSD by a psychiatrist until after that date, then you'll probably lose somewhere between 30 to 60% of your TPD benefit. We can't give you any meaningful advice on that in this forum, so if you have not yet been paid your TPD benefit, I strongly recommend that you contact the Police Association and TAL and ask them to explain how and by how much your TPD benefit is affected by these changes. So just recapping briefly, you'll receive 9 months of pay at your full award rate. At this time, the New South Wales Police will be looking at medical discharge, and you can lodge your claim for your TPD benefit at this time too, and be paid either the full or reduced TPD benefit. After that, you receive 7 years of weekly payments at 75% of your award rate, then ongoing payments until you turn 68, as well as payment of your medical expenses. So what else is available to you? A lot of first responders have heard about Section 66 claims. These are amounts of money payable to you for the injury you have suffered at work. Many first responders seek legal advice from us initially because of their psychological injury, their PTSD. If you reach a threshold of 15% whole person impairment for your psychological injury, you're entitled to claim Section 66 lump sum compensation because of your injury and Section 67 lump sum compensation because of the pain and suffering that impairment has caused you. Most of our first responders are walking away with between $40,000 to $60,000 tax-free compensation for their PTSD. This might be higher if your PTSD is particularly entrenched, you have additional diagnoses such as an alcohol use disorder, you are young and will unfortunately have to live with your injury for a long time, or you have children that have also been impacted. A female client who is in her 40s and has 3 young kids was recently paid over $50,000 for her PTSD injury. And that's on top of the weekly benefits and medical expenses she's receiving. Section 66 and Section 67 claims also apply to physical injuries. Now, many first responders are pretty stoic, and when we first ask you about your physical injuries, you might say, oh, I've got a bad back, my knees always hurt, but I never lodged a claim, I just got on with things. This is common, and it's important you know that it doesn't stop you from bringing a lump sum compensation claim. A first responder with a visible scar will be compensated over $1,000. A first responder with sore knees from foot pursuits and wrestles will be compensated over $5,000. And a recent first responder I acted for was compensated over $8,000 for a grumbling back injury, despite the fact that he had never notified his employer of that back injury. A police officer whose back injury was caused by wearing her heavy appointments belt and sitting crooked in police vehicles ended up needing surgery. And she was recently paid over $40,000 in Section 66 and Section 67 compensation. If you have a few physical injuries, these lump sum amounts can add up. These amounts of compensation help, but they're not the only reason we look into your physical injuries in a fair bit of detail. There is a bigger picture at play. And in addition to getting weekly payments for your PTSD, you might be able to claim an extra set of weekly payments for your physical injuries. Brendan, I'll just hand back over to you now to talk through this.
Thanks, Mel. So Mel's just taking you through some of the physical injuries that most first responders suffer. So not only do most first responders struggle to find work that doesn't trigger their PTSD, most struggle to find work in other occupations because of their many and varied physical injuries. So when you're looking at a claim for 2 sets of weekly payments, not one, namely you're already getting 1 weekly payment for PTSD and you're chasing a second payment for your bad back, your neck, your knees, whatever, the test can be pretty much as straightforward as this. If you couldn't work full-time as a builder's labourer because of your bad back, your dodgy shoulders, your sore knees, your stiff neck, your busted fingers, or a combination of all of them, and you can demonstrate a loss of earning capacity, we can bring a claim for 2 separate injuries, 2 separate incapacities, one PTSD, the other physical. They're separate injuries, they have separate types of incapacities. Let me give you an example. I did a case for a bloke who had time off the road twice with PTSD, went back, then he suffered a really nasty physical injury to his neck, which resulted in medical discharge. So this is the opposite of what usually happens. In 99% of cases I see, people are having time off with physical injuries, and then they've had knee surgery or shoulder surgery or whatever, and they become overwhelmed with PTSD. And they get discharged with PTSD. This guy did it in reverse, but it really makes no difference the order that it happens. So back to this fellow. Time off the road with PTSD goes back. More time off goes back. Busts his neck, gets discharged with a bad neck. Because he went off on the physical injury and because it was 2010 and the system is different, he got the big TPD mortgage buster payment. Then he starts working 4 separate jobs, none of them big hours, none of them big money. He's making about $40,000 a year between those 4 jobs. Because he had a badly busted neck, which stopped him being able to dig, shovel, lift, carry, drive, do anything physical for any period of time, EML had no trouble paying him close to $40,000 a year, which is the maximum payment to him, his wife and 2 kids under this very antiquated statutory maximum payment system that's still in place today. So he's working 4 jobs and making about $40,000 a year. He's getting paid another 40 from EML, but he's still $40,000 a year short of what he would have been earning if he was back in the job as a sergeant. So when I saw him in 2018, he hadn't been near a doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, any sort of therapist or counsellor for 8 years, hadn't taken a single tablet in that time, hadn't breathed the word PTSD to anyone in the whole time. But he was still struggling with PTSD, even though it was pretty low level for him. So we sent him off to a psychiatrist, a medico-legal expert, who said that even though his low-level PTSD was going to make it, that even though he had low-level PTSD, it was going to make it impossible for him to work for Centrelink. Difficult to work in somewhere like an abattoir with all the blood. Working in a smash repair shop was just stupid. Working in a hospital was out of the picture. And even working behind the counter at a service station seems okay until all the pissed idiots come in at 10 o'clock doing burnouts and they trigger you and you lose the job there. So there was a whole range of things that he couldn't do because of PTSD, even though he wasn't having any treatment for it. Like most police, he's not going to die of PTSD, but he will die with PTSD. Hopefully, like most police, he will be able to keep his PTSD under control. So not only did we get him 8 years of back pay, dated back to when he finished work, but now he's getting 2 sets of payments until he turns 68. 40,000 for his busted neck, 40,000 for his PTSD on top of what he's earning. So you don't need to be crippled and in a wheelchair to get weekly payments for physical injuries. You just need to show you can't do a full week's physical work. 25 hours a week, 30 hours a week, that's not a full week. You'll still get an extra weekly payment. And you don't need to be badly messed up to get weekly payments for PTSD. But one of the best things that's happened in the last 10 years, or probably really the last 4 or 5 years, is that the system, such as it is, has become so much more sophisticated. The psychiatrists understand, the lawyers understand, the judges understand, and even the insurer understands what causes PTSD, what happens to you when you've got PTSD, and that PTSD doesn't just go away in 10 minutes. It's with you forever. So the bad old days of insurers following you around with an investigator and taking footage of you smiling and laughing or having coffee or beers or whatever, they're gone. Everyone understands that the best thing you can do when you've got PTSD is to have fun, have laughs, mix with your friends, mix with your family, go on holidays, do whatever. Enjoy yourself. Video footage of you smiling and laughing doesn't mean that you're over the PTSD. It means that you're doing your best to try and deal with the PTSD. So now on to my last topic. Do you want to sue the police? Do you want to sue them because they caused your PTSD, or they made it worse, or they should have stopped it getting worse? Well, if you do, the first thing to know is that you would give up all future weekly benefits and all future medical expenses. Let's say you're 45, takes 3 years to get the case together. You finish the case or you settle the case when you're 48. You're giving up 2 decades of ongoing entitlements. So what's the payoff? Why do it? Well, a work injury damages claim or a negligence claim works like this. You're 48, you're not able to work again. You want to get 20 years of pay until you're 68. So you start off with this big yellow block here, which is 20 years of weekly payments, future weekly payments. The next thing though, the police argue, and it's accepted, first responders retire at 64, not 68. It's a hard job. You don't see any 45-year-old NRL football players, and you don't see many 65-year-old police officers. Emotionally hard, physically hard, takes its toll on you. No one goes the distance. So the judge snips off the last 4 years of your earning capacity claim. The next thing is the insurer says, well, look, you've also got physical injuries. You've got a bad back, bad knees, bad shoulders. These are nothing to do with your PTSD. So we're not going to compensate you in a PTSD claim for loss of earning capacity that's not PTSD. So if you've got a separate injury, that comes off the top. There's $500 a week straight off the top because of your bad back. It gets worse. The next thing is the insurer argues and the judge accepts that they should take off $400 a week because of residual earning capacity. You've done your best, you've got back to work, you're making $400 a week in a local timber company, but that comes off the claim. So it's starting to look a little bit skinny. The next thing is there's little bits and pieces that come out here. You might have time off to deal with back pain, time off to look after your sick mum. There might be family issues. There might be PTSD, which happened before the police were on notice. So they're not responsible for that. You might have to have a knee operation. Everyone needs time off for holidays, long service leave, whatever. So all these things come out of the eventual lump sum. So you start out claiming a big wheel of Parmesan and you end up with a little block of Swiss cheese. So you still think you want to go ahead with it. There's some more things to think about. In 35 years of practice, EML and the New South Wales Police are the hardest people I've ever had to deal with. They're cruel and awful people. You think you've had a hard time giving evidence in criminal matters, wait till you're in the stand and it's your trial. You're on trial. It's not fun. And it'll drag on for weeks. Almost every single case against the police involves a 2-day legal argument over an extension of time. Because you're bringing a claim in 2023 for an injury or an event that happened in 2016. So you're well outside the 3-year time limit. Your case gets set down for hearing in the 2-week civil circuit in Lismore in February. The judge can only give you 5 days. Then the rest of the trial gets transferred to Sydney. 3 days in May, 2 days of oral submissions in August, and you're waiting until December for a verdict, if you're lucky. The ones who do really well out of your case are the lawyers. The police only contribute part of your legal costs. They'll pay your costs on a scale which is not much better than legal aid. So your lawyer sends you a bill for $300,000 and the police are only paying $100,000 of that. The other $200,000 has to come out of your pocket, out of your verdict or your settlement. So you've got $500 in your hand and your head's ready to explode. And you now realise that you're giving up 20 years of weekly payments at $60,000 a year and all of your future medical expenses. You're also giving up the opportunity to force EML to retrain you into another job, which is what they will do if you stay on benefits. But once you've sued, there's no more workers' comp, ever. Doesn't sound that great. Now look, your mates down the pub are all telling you stories about someone they know that got a heap of money from the cops and it seems pretty easy. It's not easy. They probably didn't get a lot of money. They probably sued the police when the ongoing benefits were nowhere near as good as they are now. Here's one thing to think about. If you went off work before October 19 and you could sue the cops, get a pocket full of cash, and TAL income protection would pick you up. They'd keep paying you that 75% for the balance of the 7 years. But anyone who goes off work after 1 October 2019 loses the TAL payments as well as the EML payments. So if you go off work in 2018, start income protection in 2019, sue the police in 2021, you've got another 5 years of TAL payments at maybe $80,000 a year. So that's a $400,000 advantage over someone who goes off in 2020. Look, of course, it would be great to wash EML out of your hair and never have to deal with them again. But there's more to life than having silky hair. As Pia and Alana were talking about, healing and feeling better is important, but finding purpose is key. Don't worry about revenge, justice, principles, or vindication. Think about finding your purpose. It will reveal itself to you and you will feel so much better. Look, all of this is general advice only. Suing and negligence might be right for you. If you're the right age, you're at the right stage, you're earning the right amount of money, and your ongoing weekly benefits aren't that much, maybe suing the police is right for you, but there's not many people that fit into that category. The main thing you need to do is balance what you're getting with what you're giving up. That takes time and you don't need to worry about it today. So we understand that what you're going through, particularly at the time when you're leaving the police, is overwhelming. We encourage you to seek assistance from those that can help you. The organisations that are with you today and that are talking to you today, all we can do is take care of the legal stuff. So feel free to contact us if you have any questions about navigating the legal process, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Brendan and Melissa. It is such a complex area, and I think the beauty of this being recorded is our viewers may want to go back and listen to that again. Now, there have been some questions, so I have some questions for you both. Firstly, what will EML do when I lodge a claim?
Open a claim number, ask you to do a statement, send you to a doctor. It's a range of things that they can do, that they may do. Probably the first thing to know is with a statement, you don't necessarily have to give a statement. You don't have to recount all the horrible things that you've been exposed to. As I was saying earlier, the system is a lot more sophisticated. You can say, I've been a police officer for 20 years. I saw lots of murders, deaths, suicides and other things. And I worked in bomb and rescue or child protection or whatever for 10 years. You don't have to say much more than that. The psychiatrists get it, EML gets it, everyone gets it. You don't need to reach into your memory bank and recount all those horrible things that you've seen and you've been to. You don't need to reopen that box of terrible events. Keep it shut. Just say, I've been a police officer, I've got PTSD, let them work it out from there. If you have any issues, your case might be one where there's complex PTSD and there's been harassment, bullying, whatever. That's regretfully very common. If there's any issue that the police or EML might think it's more you just complaining about being disciplined, give us a call. It's really easy to put that in context. People are very often concerned that their claim's going to be chucked out because they were under investigation for something flimsy. But even if you are, that doesn't take away from the fact that you've got PTSD. And if it's the PTSD that stops you working, it's really just, it's quite a simple explanation actually once you get to the end of it. So once you go off, the police will ask you for a statement. If it's straightforward PTSD, just say that. Don't say anything more. If it's complex, probably best to talk to a lawyer and work out how to record the claim.
Great, thank you. I've got a few questions here. So the second question, my case manager wants to be heavily involved in my claim. Is this allowed?
I'll take that one, Belinda, because funnily enough, chatting with Pia and Alana at Emergency, they've been telling me that this kind of question is popping up a little bit of late on their Facebook group. Look, your case manager has an obligation to try and assist you with your recovery and, if possible, a return to work. But at the end of the day, it's your injury and it's your claim. So if you don't want your case manager to attend your treating practitioner appointments, you can say no. If you don't want to attend rehab or return to work providers, if it's just not the right time for you yet, you can say no to that as well. Your case manager must act in accordance with the recommendations of your treating practitioners and not do anything to put your physical or psychological health at risk. And just related to this, Belinda, is I actually had a client the other week that said, oh, my case manager's saying that if I don't return to work in a certain time frame, that my benefits will be cut off. And I just wanted to address that here. That's absolutely not the case. If you are earning less than you were when you were working, you are entitled to weekly benefits to the age of 68, and that's regardless of whether you return to work in any specific time frame. So you can take all the time that you need.
Beautiful, thank you for that. Another question about the timeframes. What are the timeframes associated with the legal process?
It's like the piece of string that I think Pia was talking about. Look, it's going to take 9 months from the day you last worked to the time the police start talking medical discharge with you. You can't really start the TPD process until you've finished work. So the TPD process starts around about 9 months after you last worked, and it'll take 6 months from there. So say month 9 to about month 15, and then your TPD should be sorted out. In terms of the Section 66 lump sum claims for physical injuries, it takes about 4 months to get the documents and the claims details from EML, a couple of months to get a medical assessment, a couple of months for EML to respond, a couple of months of arguing. So you start the claim today, you talk to a lawyer today about your bad back, your Section 66 claim. It could take 6 months, it could take 12 months. It depends on the approach that the insurer takes on it. A Section 66 lump sum claim for a psychological injury takes about the same amount of time. It takes about 12 months from the time you start to the time you finish. But it normally doesn't start until you've been off work getting treatment for about 15 months. But the psychiatrists want to talk about medication. They want you to have therapy. They want you to try a whole range of things. And even though you might feel like you're not changing that much, the psychiatrist will normally make you wait, or he will wait, or she will wait until you've been having treatment for about 15 months before they say, yes, we can assess this person. So that process takes from month 15 to month 27. So yeah, a bit over a year to a bit over 2 years after you finish work, or you first get treatment at least. If you're interested in suing the police, you can't even start until the psychological impairment has been sorted out. So we've just said that's like 2 years after leaving. And then that process takes a good 12 months to prepare the documents, get to a settlement conference. And if you settle, great. If you don't settle, it's a year till you get your day in court. So suing the police is 3 years to 4 years after your last day of work. So yeah, it's a long time. It's a real long time to spend with lawyers, isn't it? So you've got to think about that. What else is there? Look, there's just other bits and pieces of arguments with the insurers that might happen over the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years. Occasionally the insurers get a bit excited that you're having too much physiotherapy and they want to cut you off. We have a 3 to 6 month dispute. We win, you get back on payments. They're just little ongoing things that pop up from time to time. But generally, most people that have elected to stay within the workers' compensation system 5 years down the track, they're going to see their GP 4 times a year. They get a medical certificate, PTSD. Sometimes they're getting another medical certificate at the same time saying bad back, bad neck, needs physiotherapy, something like that. So that's 4 visits to the doctor a year. and going about their normal business. So dealing with the insurer long term is nowhere near as stressful as it used to be.
That's handy to know. Thank you for that. I have, we've got time for a couple more questions. So do I have to pay for medical reports for my lump sum compensation claims?
That's a good question, Belinda, and the short answer is yes, but you will be reimbursed. So we do need to obtain reports from independent doctors for your physical and psychological Section 66 claims. They can cost somewhere between $1,800 to $3,000, depending on the type of report we need. But as long as those doctors assess you to have some form of whole person impairment, so that's 1% for a scar or a back, anything above that for a physical injury, or 15% for a psychological injury, then we will ask EML to reimburse you the cost of that report. And so that can be quite quick. Sometimes EML are quite fast and we'll do that within a month. Otherwise, it might be a few months until we can settle that claim, but that will nearly always happen for you.
Beautiful, thank you. And when does the Personal Injury Commission become involved?
I'll take that one too. The Personal Injury Commission, it's an independent tribunal. You may have heard of it, some of the people listening. They make decisions in regards to the entitlements of injured workers. They're also involved in motor vehicle accident claims within New South Wales. So it's really only if there's a dispute in relation to your entitlements, for example, whether you did sustain an injury during your employment or your level of whole person impairment, that an independent member or medical assessor of the Personal Injury Commission would become involved. But for most of our first responder clients, we find that they're not actually required to deal with the commission, because we can deal with those disputes on their behalf and try and sort those out or negotiate them with the workers' compensation insurer for them.
Beautiful, thank you. And I think we've got time just for one more question. How much will obtaining some legal advice cost?
Heaps and heaps and heaps. No, Belinda, look, the workers' compensation system through EML covers the cost of most of the legal advice. There's things that are outside the straight channel of workers' comp that EML doesn't cover. TPD is one of them. TPD is not actually part of the workers' comp system. That's one of the things they don't cover. They don't cover advice about industrial rights. They don't cover advice about common law claims, suing the police. So generally, if there's advice required which is outside the narrow channel of workers' compensation, your lawyer will tell you what the claim is, what the costs are, and give you a costs agreement setting out how much you need to pay in the event that the claim finishes, that you go ahead with the claim. And generally those sorts of things are, or the costs are dependent on getting a successful result. So like in 99% of cases, if you don't get a result, you don't have to pay any costs.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for that, Brendan and Melissa. That is such a complex area. And again, I'm very happy that this has been recorded because it can create a lot of angst for first responders. Now, I note the time, so we'll look to ending the webinar here. Take a note of the chat room, because I know Simon has put something up in respect to the next program he's running. I would like to thank our wonderful speakers and the organisations they represent for taking the time out today to impart some of this knowledge that can help our first responder community. I love that all these presenters all treat the first responders they come into contact with the empathy, compassion and professionalism they deserve. So thank you all for that. Now, my apologies if your questions were not answered today. Each organisation has left us with some contact details, so you should be able to follow directly with them. You will receive a follow-up email. Again, I would like to add that we at Fearless are not medical professionals. So if something has triggered you today, don't hesitate to reach out to your medical practitioner or mental health professional. Now, a quick note, our next webinar will take place on the 12th of December, and it will involve our wonderful Fearless ambassadors, and they're going to talk about putting your mental health first during the holiday period. So that will be wonderful. So ensure you are subscribed to receive our emails or keep an eye on our social media. Lastly, we at Fearless are most grateful for any donation, no matter how small. Please go to our website at www.fearless.org.au and select the donation tab. A big thank you again to all of our speakers, and to you, our first responders. Thank you for your service. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Belinda.
Thanks so much, Belinda.
Thanks,
for
Belle.
having us.